Hello everyone, this is Kevin Annett. It's Wednesday, February 26, 2020. Today, as part of the preamble and deliberations of the West Coast Common Law Court of Justice that's going to convene in Vancouver, Canada on March 30th of this year, I am today charging 12 individuals with being part of a criminal conspiracy, an ongoing criminal conspiracy to aid and abet genocide in Canada. Now, before I get to naming those 12 and the specifications of what we're charging them with, I want to comment about the situation right now. People know a lot, even the corporate media is reporting the protests against the Chinese-owned pipeline going across British Columbia, liquid natural gas, the latest expression of genocide in Canada, the traditional triangle, or what I call the octopus between big money, big government, and big churches, all working together as they have for many years to wipe out Indigenous peoples for money. Well, that octopus that we described came from somewhere. And I've had personal taste of that for the past 25 years. This action today that I'll be describing is done on behalf of everyone. All Canadians have been defrauded into paying taxes to a genocidal government, putting money in the collection plate and footing the tax bill for genocidal churches that killed more than 60,000 children in their residential schools. You don't have to be part of this fraud anymore. You can be part of this action, stepping back, renouncing these criminal institutions and powers. And that's exactly what we're going to do today. They say evil has an address and a name, and it doesn't want you knocking on the door. Today, we'll be knocking on the door. Here are the 12 names. I am today publicly charging these individuals with being part of a criminal conspiracy. Former Prime Minister Chretien, Staff Sergeant Peter Montague of E Division of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police in BC. John Chretien, former CEO and President of Weyerhaeuser Corporation. John Kishore, United Church Minister and former Aboriginal Affairs Minister in the BC government. Marion Best, former Moderator of the United Church, and Virginia Coleman, former General Secretary of that same church. John Jessamine, Legal Counsel for the United Church. Brian Thorpe, former Secretary of the BC Conference of the United Church. Two United Church clergymen on Vancouver Island, Phil Spencer and Foster Freed, and two private citizens in Surrey, British Columbia, James McNamee and Anne McNamee. Well, here's the specifications. All 12 of these individuals were part of a criminal conspiracy that began on January 23, 1995, when I was summarily and unlawfully removed as minister, United Church minister, St. Andrew's Church in Port Alberni, British Columbia, after I had unearthed two major crimes: the death and torture of children in the local Alberni Indian residential school, and the theft of native land by Weyerhaeuser Corporation, aided and abetted by the United Church and the BC government. Let it be known as uncontested fact that I claim that this criminal conspiracy is ongoing. It was committed with malice aforethought and without justification to destroy my livelihood, my job, my reputation, professional standing, religious vocation, and good name, also to rob me of my children and to alienate them from me permanently, and to generally attack and impede all of my work and the work on the lives of the Native people I've been working with. Let it be further known that as a result of this criminal conspiracy, I have indeed suffered all of these losses and damages, and consequently I've endured enormous personal suffering. A suffering and damages for which all 12 are publicly responsible, legally liable, and I so name them now and consider them to be liable and responsible for these losses and damages. Well, let it be further known that the purpose of this criminal conspiracy by the accused was and continues to be to aid and abet the crime of genocide in Canada by church, state, and business, and to conceal our own malfeasance and that of others in these and other acts. 1. The theft of Indigenous lands and resources. 2. The rape, torture, trafficking, and murder of Aboriginal children. 3. The silencing and killing of witnesses to these crimes. 4. The obstruction of justice. 5. The destruction of the buried remains of Indian residential school children and evidence pertaining to their suffering and death. And finally, the marginalizing and destroying of the lives and livelihoods of not only myself, but anyone involved in our movement, and especially 7 Indigenous activists in our movement who were killed after confronting the Anglican, Catholic, and United Churches for their crimes of genocide. And, as well as those 7, 3 Port Alberni residents who were also killed for the same reason. Well, this criminal conspiracy is especially nefarious and a matter of great public concern and interest because it involves the act of defrauding of the Canadian people, and it constitutes a threat to the laws, peace, and welfare of Canada and to the interest Canadians have in public safety and justice. And in that sense, this notice of liability and action on my part is done on behalf of all Canadians. Now, the 12 are hereby notified that they can be released from this condition of liability and responsibility. I will release them from any such liability, provided they do 4 things. First of all, they must publicly and in writing acknowledge their involvement in this criminal conspiracy and share all of the details of it, including correspondence, plans, so on. But they have to talk specifically about their knowledge and involvement in these 4 aspects: my firing without cause and my unlawful defrocking by the United Church. Secondly, the involvement of the church in my own divorce, the divorce action brought against me by my ex-wife Ann McNamee, their funding of that divorce, and their ensuring that my children, Claire and Eleanor, would be robbed from me legally, or rather I should say illegally. Finally, thirdly, the involvement of the United Church in the scuttling of my doctoral studies program at the University of British Columbia, and my attempted ordination into the Unitarian Church, and finally, the involvement of the 12 in the ongoing misinformation and black ops campaign conducted against me by the RCMP under the direction of Inspector Peter Montague, United Church officials, and by the Canadian government since January of 1995. That's the first condition. They have to publicly disclose. Secondly, they have to issue to me an unconditional public apology and admission of guilt for these actions and take responsibility for the damages. That apology will not be a justification of their action, but rather a full acceptance of their legal and moral responsibility for the damages. Thirdly, the accused, and especially the officers of the United Church, have to restore to me everything taken from me, including my full benefits and status as a United Church clergyman. They must also publicly acknowledge the fraudulent and unlawful nature of my so-called defrocking hearing and the participation of United Church officials in the destruction of my ministry, marriage, public reputation, professional retraining and employment, as well as my university studies. And the fourth condition is that the accused must restore financially everything taken from me. They have to issue reparations totaling no less than $1 million for general lost income and benefits and no less than $2.5 million for general pain and suffering. These are standard legal requirements. Now, if the accused accept this conditional offer of honorable settlement, they are not released from their liability and responsibility toward the damage they've done to Indigenous children, to Indigenous nations, and to the Canadian people. Now, the accused have until March 7th, 2020 to respond. That is 10 days from now. If they do not respond, their action or lack of action will be interpreted as constituting an act of bad faith, an admission of guilt, liability, and responsibility for the crimes of which I am publicly accusing them now. They will be admitting their responsibility for the criminal conspiracy I'm describing. Now, in the event of such a failure by the accused to respond, I will be free to pursue and obtain just and necessary legal, moral, and political remedies and reparations from all 12 of the accused, including by commencing private prosecutions and other legal actions against them, by placing liens on their properties and assets, and by performing citizen arrests on them and others, especially to defend the lives of children. Now, be further advised that any failure by the accused to respond to this notice and offer will compel me to convene a global press conference and public hearing in Vancouver on Monday, March the 9th, 2020, at which I will present the full details of their crimes, including the identity of the 7 individuals who they were responsible for killing in Vancouver and the 3 individuals in Port Alberni whose deaths they were responsible for. I will make the same presentation before domestic and international courts of law in the coming period and at the opening session of the West Coast Common Law Court of Justice to be held in Vancouver, Canada, on Monday, March 30th of this year. Now, the complete list of charges and specifications against the 12 accused will be presented by me and will be found online in murderbydecree.com under ITCCS updates as of March the 9th, 2020. Today, this statement is going out to all 12 of the accused. It's signed, witnessed, and issued by me today, Kevin Daniel Annett, and witnessed by Brenda Gale Hurst, a resident of the Downtown East Side. This can be found and will be posted at murderbydecree.com under ITCCS updates. I make a public call and appeal now to the 12 individuals to make honorable and just settlement with me and with all of the people they have wronged. This is Kevin Annett, Eagle Strong Voice. Stand by for more. Thank you.